I've got some heart pine here in the vise. And even though it has pine in the name, this is a difficult wood to work with because the density difference between the early and the late wood is so dramatic. And this late wood is really, really tough stuff. If you ever work with Douglas fir, you'll know what I'm talking about. The saw will tend to want to chatter as it hits those really hard late growth sections. So this is a great wood to work with here. As I set the saw on the wood, I want to feel this lower horn of the saw. I want to feel that kind of pressing into my palm. When I feel it pressing there, I know that I've taken the weight, I've cantilevered the weight off the toe of the saw. And I can just start a stroke like that. There's no reason to do these backstroke things like that. It's a real constant push across the wood. And when you start your cuts with just that forward push on the actual cutting stroke, you get a very clean line just by starting on the push stroke. And it's all about lifting the weight off the toe. So a great exercise for that, beyond just the tactile feeling the horn down here. But if your saw doesn't have that, it might be a little more difficult to figure out what's going on. So what I'll do is I'll pinch the wood between my thumb and forefinger. This is my non-sawing hand. When I squeeze the wood, I'm actually pushing the saw over. See how the saw is moving back and forth as I squeeze my fingers together. So what I'll do is drop the saw parallel to the end grain, lift the weight off, and just start to slowly move the saw back and forth. And I'll pinch my fingers. So I'm moving the saw backwards and forwards, but I'm also moving it side to side with my fingers. Now start taking a little bit more weight off the toe, letting the weight of the saw do its work. And if you look, I've got a little dado forming in there. It's really shallow because I'm not putting a lot of weight on the saw. If I put a whole lot of weight on it, it'll start to grab a kerf and it's not going to want to move back and forth in there at all. You should be able to slide it a pretty significant distance back and forth over the wood. I've got probably a 1/2 inch wide little sawn dado being formed here. That's a great exercise for engaging the saw just right on that first stroke. So then once you got a feel for that cantilevered weight effect, you can just come in and start making consecutive cuts. And you'll notice when you start on the push stroke like that, you can be highly accurate. I've got these curves here on the wood. I can come in and I can split the difference between those curves very easily, and then split the difference again. And again. To the point where in like 3/16 of an inch, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 saw curves all grouped in there because of the fact that you can really precisely position your saw when you're just starting on the push stroke like that. Now, like I said, heart pine can be pretty difficult, but if you really want to test yourself, go to some sort of exotic species. This is African shedwood. It's really dense, very difficult wood to work. And, you know, the harder woods are going to be harder to start your saw on. So again, taking a weight off the wood, off the saw, you should be able to just start your saw cut perfectly. Now, I'm working with a dovetail saw here that has really fine teeth. So let me grab one of my panel saws. It's obviously a much coarser tooth. Same thing applies here. Feel the weight pressing into the horn pressing into my palm. And I can start even a more aggressive saw. Just by working on the push stroke. Going with a full-blown 5 points per inch rip saw, Well, now things get a lot harder. Certainly I've got the horn here that I can feel, but the handle doesn't fit like a glove, like a joinery saw. And I've got this long blade that I've got to cantilever the weight properly. So if I really focus on keeping that toe light, I can start on the push stroke. And I find that it's really hard to do way out on the toe. So I'll tend to bring it in a little bit more. And I can start the cut even on a big tooth saw like this just by taking the weight off the toe as I begin that push stroke.